Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. And welcome to today's webinar, Food Risk Intelligence and AI for Food Risk Prevention. My name's Amy. I'm a member of the marketing team at Perry Johnson Registrars Food Safety, Inc. I'll be facilitating today's webinar and offering technical support to our speakers. Today, we're excited to be welcoming Nikos Miniselis of AGROKNOW for today's discussion, and we'll be introducing him to you all shortly. But just before we get started, I wanted to go over a few housekeeping notes. To ensure audio quality on today's webinar, all of our attendees are on mute. However, we do absolutely want to take any questions you might have. To ask a question, you can just go ahead and type it directly into the questions tab of the GoToWebinar control panel and click send. We'll answer as many of these questions as we have time for at the end of the prepared slides. There's no need to wait until the end of the presentation to submit your questions. You can send them our way as you think of them. Some of the most common questions we get are things like, where can I get the slides? Or will a copy of a recording be available? And I'm happy to say that the slides from today's presentation will be available for download from the PGRFSI website, and a recording of today's presentation will be posted to our YouTube channel for you to review, or even if you'd like to share the link with someone who couldn't attend the live broadcast, we absolutely encourage you to send that out. But just really quick, this is what the control panel might look like on your screen. Could be a bit different depending on your device or your operating system. You'll just go to the questions tab, click the little triangle so it's pointing down. It should open up this little panel here where you can type a question and click send, and that'll come right to us on our control panel, and we'll have those questions answered for you, as many as possible. But now I'm going to go ahead and introduce our moderator for today's presentation, and that's Paul Demarin. He is our Senior Vice President of Food Safety and Supply Chain here at PGRFSI. Paul joined us in January of 2020 and has over 35 years of experience in the hospitality, service, and retail agri-food sectors. Paul's also a board member of the OFPA, that's the Ontario Food Protection Association. He's also an advisory council member with the George Washington University School of Business for their digital marketing certificate program. Before he came to PGRFSI, Paul worked for 17 years in the certification industry with clients in sectors from food safety and supply chain to brand protection and quality. Paul's also worked for many years in management systems certification, and before that, Paul was a professional chef and consultant for over 20 years. So Paul, I'll turn things over to you and you can take it away when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Amy, and also thank you, Nikos, for joining us. It's my pleasure to be here today. I'm very excited about this particular webinar. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us here. I know we have a large crowd today. I have the pleasure of introducing Nikos from AGROKNOW. Nikos is the founder and CEO of AGROKNOW, and that is a food safety intelligence company that helps predict food risks to help companies prevent them. Nikos holds a PhD on agricultural information management and works with industry, academia, and international organizations on ways that state-of-the-art technologies can be used to help us all really solve critical challenges in the food supply chain. So Nikos, again, on behalf of PGRFSI, thank you so much for your time. I respect you greatly in the industry and your company. I'm going to interact with you throughout the presentation as I normally will, but at this time, I'm going to pass it over to you and can't wait to hear everything that you have to say. So thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Good morning, Amy and Paul, and thank you so much for making this happen. And good morning or good afternoon, good evening to everyone that is joining the webinar. You see that in the photo I look much better, right? But I will try to do my best with the content that we have today for you. So first of all, a couple of words about who we are, what AGROKNOW does. For over 12 years, 13 years now, we have been supporting decisions with lots of data in the food supply chain. This is why the company started. This is what we have been doing since day one, and this is what we keep on doing right now. And in particular, we have been focusing during the past 5 years in supporting the people that work in safety, quality, or supplier compliance teams. That means the people that ensure that the food that every one of us is getting on our plates is safe and healthy. And very often, the question that we hear from people that work in companies like manufacturers or retailers or food service chains or other types of companies in the supply chain is how can we be early informed about what is happening out there that is important about our business? How can we make sure that we take action before an incident happens, before someone gets ill or even worse, dies? And the main challenge that they're facing is that they're dealing with hundreds or thousands sources of information or even raw data that hides some information inside. And this adds up to millions, tens or hundreds of millions of data records that may or usually have some value. How can we make sense out of this information? That's what we do. We support and we serve these people. The way that we do it, primarily through our platform, our food risk intelligence platform called Foodakai. It is an online cloud-based solution that is trusted by major manufacturers, major retailers, major food service chains, leaders around the world. They use it to ensure that whatever is happening at their global locations and the way that they see ingredients, materials, products being supplied and then manufactured and distributed in the supply chain is done in a way that helps them monitor, assess, and prevent risks. But very, very often, they come with a different question. And this is why we have developed another offering that we call Risk Adapted. And this is actually providing access to the data, to the hundreds of millions of data that we are working on as a service.
Nikos, I've had the pleasure to listen to you speak directly at GFSI conferences about risk data as a service. Who do you think is typically interested in getting access to this, and why do you think that is?
The companies that come interested into the data as a service versus an online solution that makes everything easier because it supports different daily decisions that have to do with the mitigation of risks are the ones that have internal in-house teams, very often data science teams that are developing their own internal systems. Very often they're trying to develop models that will combine their internal data and everything that is outside, or everything that is outside in the external world that is relevant to their products or their ingredients or their suppliers. And this is why they come to us, developing this capability, being able to collect and have access to all these data sources that talk about the risks that are external to their systems is something very difficult that you have to develop for years as a capability. We've spent, I told you, more than 12 years in developing this.
Okay, thank you.
And when I'm talking about hundreds of millions of data, this is exactly the type of picture that I'm describing. Either whether we are looking at the official data sources, everything officially announced from different agencies or authorities in many, many languages, in many, many formats. In some cases, very structured information, in most cases, very unstructured information that comes in a PDF or just a text news item somewhere. And we make sure that we collect it, we translate it into English, we enrich it, we provide some good structure, and then on top of that, we offer our solutions. And we can also add to that the unofficial, but still in many cases very relevant data sources.
And Nikos, that's a good point. I mean, you know, you have 1 billion different records here potentially that you can access, and I can't even imagine that there would be a new data source. But let's say that one of your customers or a new customer has a new data source. How easily or quickly can you add that to the program, and are there any limitations around that?
So this is an important question, because what we're looking at here is not a static picture. It's something that we continuously enhance by adding new data sources that clients request. It usually takes us something like 10 to 15 working days to do this, depending on the complexity of the source. And what we do is that we study it, we understand what exactly they're announcing and in which way it is typically announced. We set up the software system or algorithm that will collect it, scrap it, and bring it to the master database. And then we have the food safety experts and scientists that ensure that what we will be getting is accurate and valid. And after we test how it works, we can trust that this will be efficiently and reliably working then. So around 2 weeks, in some complex cases, it may take us a bit more.
Okay, great, thanks.
So that's a brief intro in what we do, what we offer, and what kind of data we work with. But I'm not here to talk to you about us. I'm here to demystify how AI can support people like the participants of the webinar in very important risk prevention tasks. Let me start with the basics. A dictionary definition. What does artificial intelligence mean? I would like to highlight the part of the definition that focuses on a system, a machine, that can imitate intelligent behavior of human beings. So the software system is trying to imitate something that we do as human beings. And if we want to dive a bit deeper into what this means, I'm using another dictionary definition here. I want you to focus on the last part of the definition that says intellectual processes that are characteristics of human intelligence, such as reasoning, finding the meaning in something that looks meaningless or doesn't have meaning evidently there, being able to generalize from observations, or being able to learn from things that have happened in the past. This is exactly what we try to do with software systems and algorithms that are the so-called artificial intelligence ones, imitating this type of behaviors. And there are so many technologies and so many algorithms and so many models that are trying to do different bits and pieces of these things. Let me give you an example. This is one of the applications that I found very interesting. It's a machine vision application, so it's actually a camera that looks at the production line, and it tries to understand if the products that are passing through have any food safety issues. This goes a bit beyond just understanding the image, and if there is something in the image that the camera sees is different than what it expects. Artificial intelligence, the techniques that this application and this technology is offering, it goes a little bit deeper. It tries to understand what exactly is, for example, the contamination that a product has. to understand if what it sees as a defect in the picture is just a quality issue or it is a safety issue. So it has to do all the reasoning and all the extraction of meaning and rely on what past experience has told it so that it learns how it will do it right now. And this is one of the very typical things that we try to do and that we need to do with these systems. We need to give them plenty of historical data so that we train it very well on dealing with what is happening right now and giving it the ability to some extent to predict what will come later on. Again, we rely a lot on data to help these systems show some kind of intelligence. Then this has been one of the very interesting topics that the industry has been discussing about. A few months ago, there was a discussion paper that we put together inviting thought leaders in the industry, both from major companies in the food supply chain and technology leaders in the field, asking their views on how they see the way that we do food risk prevention right now is changing. Which are the opportunities? Which are the promises? And which are promises that cannot be kept?
Nikos, just going back to that, I've had the opportunity to work with various softwares over the years from a predictive analytics space. Tell me in your position, why you think a software system can really help us to uncover what the next food incident is going to be and actually predict it or prevent it before it happens.
That's the killer question that everyone is asking me. Huh?
Yeah.
They're not always as polite as you are, Paul. Sometimes they tell us, can we really predict an incident before it happens? Can we really tell that in 1 week at this supplier, at this location, this product line, this will emerge? Therefore, today we can go and we can take action before it happens. The simple, honest answer is no. It doesn't work like this. What it can do, and I will reveal some of the secrets later on, is that it can focus on very specific problems and try to predict and give us an estimate of a likelihood of an event happening or of the number of events that might happen, or whether we should expect an increase or a decrease in the next few weeks. These are things that these systems can tell us.
Great.
They don't work as a magic crystal ball yet.
Right. I think it's based on the information, the situation, the knowledge that we have to, accurately try to predict with any sort of certainty, what's going to happen when and how, based on all of the data points that we have, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And what I like very much about this conversation is that I think it's also linked to the perception that we have, that people have, about what technology can do and innovations can really do. And sometimes it affects our positioning against something new like these technologies. That's why this diagram, it's one of my favorite diagrams in my work. When I was invited by a chief scientist at the USDA for a meeting about the future of the things that they were doing and to contribute to the conversation, I brought this small book with me and I gave it as a present because it is the essence of how you put technology innovations in the hands of people. And what you will see here is that there will always be, and there are, the early adopters, the enthusiasts, the ones that will try things before they are mature. but the majority are people that are very pragmatic, which means they want to be sure that something is working properly and does a job, or in many cases, conservative against technology, which means that they are quite skeptic and don't believe it. And we have the tale of the very skeptics. So imagine if we start the conversation with these kind of promises like we will predict the next recall before it happens, period, how it can grow this chasm that we see in between there, getting more of the people to start using an innovation. And you would expect that I am one of the innovators that love technology, adopt everything that is new. I have to tell you, I have to confess, a few days ago, I bought my new smartphone, and I bought the previous model than the one that is currently in the market. And I've been always doing this. So in terms of this kind of technology and innovation, I would say that I'm quite a pragmatist or even a conservative. Paul, what about you?
Well, that's an interesting question, Nikos. I've certainly seen and studied these maps as well before in the past, but if you asked me 10 years ago, I think I would have fallen into the late majority category. But today, I can say without a doubt, I'm absolutely an early adopter to most of the technology that I use. 10 years ago, there was a part of me that thought one day I'm going to have to get an Apple Watch. And at that time, I didn't really want one. I didn't need one. I didn't even use a regular watch, so it didn't really make a lot of sense to me that I was going to put, several $100s worth of technology on my wrist and commit to upgrading it every couple of years. I, saw family and friends that had them, but really at that time I didn't have a desire for one. So, but at that time I also had the, suspicion that one day the Apple Watch was going to somehow find its way, into my life and on my wrist, and it certainly has. And I had a feeling that the technology was going to gradually become more ubiquitous until not having one became more of a statement. So I think it's true that in 2021 today, no one forces us to have a computer or a smartphone or high-speed internet or a Twitter account or whatnot. But I think if you don't have those things or exclude yourself from that, you may find yourself that you're going to want access to that. And if you don't have those types of services, some of these features are going to become exclusive, and you're not going to be able to work as well without them. And certainly the network effects are going to ultimately make it, I think, socially awkward of not having one. So yeah, it's a great slide. I agree with you, and I think now I kind of definitely fall in the early adopters part.
And this is exactly what you're describing, is exactly the danger that we are facing right now with predictive or AI-powered technologies in food risk prevention. That this is the time that we see the first good applications and solid applications of this technology. And this is a time that companies have to start deciding on how and where they should start from. Always facing the danger of having this chasm, this gap in front of them. And this is exactly what I'm going to cover in the next slides.
Perfect.
Let me start from the basics. When I talk about food risk intelligence, what do I mean? We talked about AI and behaviors that imitate human intelligence. The way that I define the definition, my working definition of food risk intelligence, is describing systems that try to imitate and therefore support human decisions related to the identification, assessment, and mitigation of a risk in the food supply chain. And this means things like discover meaning in all the data that I have about risks in my supply chain, or being able to observe some things and generalize in a conclusion that it could be more valid for my supply chain, or learn from things that have happened in the past so that I can prevent something when the signs are similar. This is the intelligence part there. And very often we like to break it down to even more specific actions and areas. The way that we do this is that we separate everything that has to do with monitoring of risks, especially in our case that we're looking at external risks that are out there in the global supply chain. How can I scan whatever is out there, investigate if it is accurate and how it can be combined with other sources of information, and then get back and report the relevant insights that I have from all the incidents around the world. The assessment part, risk ranking and scoring. This means I have thousands or hundreds of suppliers. Who are the ones that I should really be taking care of and looking and supporting closely during the next few months? How can I use all the data that is out there to do this kind of scoring and ranking in terms of my suppliers or my ingredients? And then the really juicy and important part is, how can I prepare a good plan to prevent the risks? How should I allocate my lab testing budget? How should I plan my supplier audits or my facility audits? When and how can I change these plans? Which are the signals? This is how we group these different questions. I will give you 3 examples of excellent systems doing such things. Here is a really good and very well-known system that is monitoring and alerting incidents such as recalls and identifying trends out there. Many of the participants in the webinar may already use it. Whenever something happens, in a few minutes, you receive it in your email as an alert. Be careful. Another excellent system. It uses incidents like this to contribute to the calculation of a risk score for ingredients, and then can provide this kind of indication, color-coded indication. This is a high-risk ingredient. This is a mid-risk ingredient, based on the historical data of the past 3 years, for example. And here is a system that is supporting the prevention decisions. It's using hundreds of different HACCP plans that the companies that are using it are putting together with pre-prepared templates by the experts of the company. And when you design your own HACCP plan, it guides you and suggests things that maybe you're forgetting. So which are the challenges? We have so excellent systems out there. Which are the challenges that we hear that they still face in the market? I'm using here some of the things that we hear from our clients. Yes, I do receive daily alerts. One is coming from one authority, and after a week, another one is coming about the same supplier from another authority. Is it the same incident or something new? And I've heard clients describing their teams spending hours searching online to discover on whether another alert that they have received is the same, which means that they have already dealt with it a few days ago, or it's something new, which means that they have to take action. Or,
yeah, Nico. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, I was just going to say,
yeah,
I know there.
I want to use another example. Yeah, I want to use another example.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've heard one of our clients, a multinational company, being able to perform risk assessment of their ingredients only once per year, because they have a monstrous spreadsheet that gets data from different teams and departments. It takes them 2 months to fill in all the data in the spreadsheet. They calculate the score, and then for the next 10 months, this is how they prioritize their actions. Paul, you wanted to ask me something?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry to have interrupted you there. You know, taking a look at these challenges, these are challenges that we see a lot as well on a daily basis. Which challenges that you list here on your screen do you feel that artificial intelligence can really make a big difference for a company?
I think that in terms of automating things, we don't use artificial intelligence, or we don't need artificial intelligence. But there are things, especially when you're trying to predict things that might happen in the future, where you really need a system that has some kind of intelligence in it. I will use the 2 examples of risk prevention. Near real time, I have a prevention plan, and there is something in the data that is coming in that is giving me a signal that something has changed. I have to change my prevention methods or tactics. We measure, we see an increasing number of incidents associated with ETO in sesame seeds. Yes, you're not testing for sesame seeds for ETO because this is something that you never had an issue with. But now we see this coming. If you're selling in the European market, you have to make sure that you test for it. This is something you have to do right now. That's the near real time. And then there is the forward-looking view of risks that may come up or will probably come up on a 2 to 3 year horizon. Which are these things that are affecting the global system? And there are macro indicators, like climate change or economic conditions that may lead to an increase of a new emerging risk. This is really where we really need the power, the predictive power of AI models.
Right. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So let me get to an example. I will focus on monitoring, early threat warning. What does it mean? This is what I called earlier the food risk monitoring tools, but very often you hear them as horizon scanning tools or surveillance tools or foresight tools. They are the tools that will let you know that something has gone wrong with a key ingredient or a key supplier or one of your products, and you have to take action now. How do we do this? I will walk you through what we hear, the ways that we hear from our clients. This is the most traditional approach. We trust our suppliers. This is very good if you have suppliers that you can rely upon. You don't change them very often. You have a long-standing relationship with them. They are regional or local. They're not far away. So it is easy to maintain a relationship and to make sure that you have a way to control that everything is going well in the relationship. It doesn't work if you're changing suppliers because, for example, every time you're judging on the price of what they're offering. It doesn't work if you have suppliers that are abroad, especially in parts of the world that don't have systems that you can rely upon. Then maybe you go to option 2. Option 2 is that you trust the very large sources, official sources of information, in the markets that are interesting and relevant for you. The FDA announcements, for example, the US FDA announcements, or the European RASAF notification portal. They collect everything that is being reported. They aggregate it and they publish it in a website. Excellent if they cover the geographies of interest. They're excellent also if you are not very sensitive in terms of when they are going to be published. Not very good at if you rely on these announcements to take immediate action. In the European case, there may be days or sometimes even more time that will pass by until an incident is communicated from a country, a member state, to the central authority, and then it is announced in the central portal. And of course, it is not the best way to monitor what's happening out there if you're looking at geographies and markets that are not well covered by these sources. So what can you do? The next thing that you can do, search online. Systematically search online. Create a list of trusted sources, in most cases official authorities, but also in many cases other sources that you trust that they are reporting incidents or other announcements that are relevant to you, and devoting every week, every day, some time, some hours to visit them and discover if something relevant has been announced, or sign up to any alerts that they have as websites. This is something that works, and we hear very often from clients that this is the way that they do things, but who has to do the synthesis and post-processing and understanding if one incident that you read here and there is the same thing or not? You have to do this, and your team. And this means hours invested of people in this task. It doesn't work if you have limited resources and a small team and you cannot devote them in doing this kind of online research that is not part of your core business. There is always a solution of developing a software. And this is now we are starting to come to the automation parts. And you can do this internally. We hear this very often from clients that when they see that this is becoming unmanageable, they usually assign it to someone who can develop a software system and start monitoring this in a more automated way. It's a very good solution if you have these resources and you have the budget and the patience for them to develop such a service. It is not a good solution if you don't have in-house resources. It is not a good solution if you have to hire someone to develop it for you and then leave. It is not a good solution if your business is not related to software development. And this is where you go to option 5, which is using a supplier. And there are very good solutions out there. Different solutions for different pockets and different needs, services that can monitor globally what is happening in different ways and provide a view into what is happening in an aggregated way. Let me share a bit of how companies do it right now. This is a small survey that we did with a small but representative sample of companies that we have asked. How do you do risk monitoring right now? You will see that most of them either do it manually, devoting time to search online the different sources and sites that are important, or are relying to a third-party service. Very few, and this refers to the very large companies that have the in-house capabilities, very few develop such systems in-house. And I have heard about a couple of cases of colleagues that started developing something like this in-house, and when they understood the magnitude of the resources needed to build something really good, they decided that it's not worth the investment, and they can easily rely to a third-party service. Paul, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely. Please do.
If we ask your clients, what do you think? What will they tell us?
Well, I mean, you know, it's a good question. I've had the opportunity of working with companies for about 17 years now in this space around, you know, organizations trying to manage risk, and I see that they're currently managing risk in a number of different ways. Most today are doing risk assessments of their suppliers and risk tiering them based on the risk they present to their business. Usually that's with a low to high matrix rating. Other companies have lists of approved suppliers. Many companies I work with, especially on their branded or high risk suppliers, conduct supplier audits. Other ways that I've seen companies monitor the risk is through their internal audit programs or the adoption of national and international standards and certifications like GFSI or ISO. You know, but those are some of the high level ways that our companies are currently managing and working with risk.
So trying to make sure that the process is in place so that everything is working properly and no risks appear.
Well, exactly. It's more, it's like predicting risk without using the predictive analytics software, if you will. So they're using, you know, forms of risk prevention like auditing, supplier audits, internal audits, you know, national and international standard adoption, things like that.
It makes sense. It makes sense. And again, it's the part of the chain and your world that you can control. When we look at the outside world, we have this kind of challenges and this kind of approaches. How can we deal with this? Let's see. I have an idea to share from the way that we work on it. How to start looking at this and improving the way that someone is dealing with the situation. Let me first come back to my favorite slide and talk about the why. Why should we understand where we are and start working on this? It's exactly because the majority of the people working in any company are most probably like the majority of people here. You will find less tech enthusiasts or visionaries and more people that are dedicated in their daily tasks and operations. They appreciate technology, or maybe not. They are eager to adopt something new if it is proven to improve the way that they do things today. They wouldn't switch the way that they do things today just to experiment with something new. And then if it doesn't work, okay, it doesn't matter. It does matter. So understanding and being very careful about how am I going to start implementing or bringing in a digital solution in my company requires understanding where I stand right now and making a plan. And this is what we actually try to find a way to help. We wanted to find a way to help our clients understand and help the conversation, the right conversation, start by a simple tool that helps them assess what we call digital risk maturity. And it's a questionnaire, an online questionnaire. It takes only a couple of minutes to complete. But if you see inside what is in this tool, you will see that it has, in the different areas that I have spoken about? Monitoring, assessment, prevention. Depending on the answer that someone provides, a color coding that indicates how digitally mature are you now? How digitally mature are the practices and the tools that you are applying now? So how do we use this with our clients? I will share an example from last week. We had this conversation with a new client, and we asked them to complete the questionnaire. And they said, how do we do monitoring? We systematically devote time to visit online sites and sources. Okay, this is good. You have an eye on the outside world. This is the way to avoid surprises, especially if you're having suppliers abroad. But in terms of digital maturity, you're yellow. There are ways in which you can further automate the way that you do this and save time. In terms of risk assessment, the scoring and ranking, how do you do this? Well, we have internal meetings and we have our experienced team members and our experts, and we have a conversation about the risks that should be worrying us. That's important, but you can do more things. And especially if you want to automate the process and make it even more efficient, there are several things that you can do down the road. And in terms of your prevention plans, how do you take decisions on when and how you will change something because there is something in the horizon that you have to react upon? Well, we have regular meetings and conversations about how we should be updating our plans. This is important, but there are ways in which you can automate this process and make it more systematic as well. This is the conversation about where a client stands. And if you look at the statistics on where their peers are, you will see that the majority of their peers are at the same level. So this is not bad. It's the beginning of a journey. Yeah? But where do you want to go? That's the next question. And we had this conversation. And they said, we want to be all green. We want to be fully digital. The market is changing, the industry is changing. We want to be part of this change. So we want to rely on third-party services. We don't have the in-house resources or interest to develop things on our own. And we want to rely upon a third-party service to do this kind of risk monitoring and horizon scanning. We want to rely on a third-party service to help us automatically calculate the risks and the risk scores of ingredients and suppliers. And we want to have a third-party service that will help us prevent risks by predicting them. And this is exactly the value that we see in having such a tool in place, ensuring that in a team, within a company, that has people that already do things in a given way, and they are not everyone is willing to jump in and try a new technology. And in a team that has very important and significant tasks to face, the mission of the people dealing with safety in companies is critical. If we want to make this transition, how can we make it in a more systematic way, plan the different steps very carefully, and make sure that everyone comes along and they have the necessary support at every step? That's exactly the conversation that we want to have. And this is how you can try it on your own. Play with the questionnaire. Type agrono.typeform.com/maturity. You will find the 3 questions. How do you do monitoring? How do you do assessment? How do you do prevention today? And after you finish, you will get the results. We will send you the results. Take a minute to think about it. Where do we stand today? Where would we like to be? Do we want to automate the way that we do things or not? This is an essential question and step in the process. Paul, I really wanted you to do this live, but I didn't find a way to convince you.
No, it's I would love to do it. I actually did it. It took me literally about 35 or 40 seconds. It was quite interesting. I just know, in the interest of time and wanting to give our audience the ability to ask some questions, we'll bypass this for now. But I do recommend you check this out.
So let's go to the last part. Amy, I hope I didn't click on something nasty here.
Yep, you should be good to go now.
Thank you. And what about AI? There is no AI so far in what we're describing. Where is the artificial intelligence in it? Yeah? I have a few examples and I want to share them with you. First of all, an analogy. And an example that you really know extremely well. Do you remember how our life, your life, our life was before we had a weather prediction application in our smartphones? Personally, I still remember the days when we were waiting for the news cast, the part in the 8 o'clock news every night, where we had an expert in weather forecasting who was describing the weather that we should expect next day. And this was the only source of information that we had to decide on what will happen and how we should dress, what we should be careful about, if we should expect extreme weather conditions. Today, it's everywhere. Does it predict something that will happen tomorrow outside my door with 100% accuracy? No, that's exactly the question that we were talking about, Paul, earlier. But it gives us an estimate, a likelihood. And we can trust this estimate to take some decisions. And depending on the decision that we want to support, we use different, even more sophisticated systems if we want. I will share with you 3 examples. 3 things that we see that AI can do in food risk intelligence. Extract meaning, forecast what is coming up in product categories or ingredient categories, and calculate the likelihood of risk. You will allow me now to use as an example our platform, Budakai. First of all, to show you how do we use AI to extract meaning from lots of data. This is a typical incident that is announced by several authorities, which means around the world at different times and dates. You can see this in the dates that are very different, and there is a delay. In some cases, in different languages, and in some cases, it's only a textual reference of an incident without mentioning the supplier. The way that we employ AI in getting this information and understanding what is the product category, what is the hazard, what is the supplier, why do we put together the 3 announcements that we found, in this case, 3 announcements that we found and aggregate them in one that talks about this particular incident. This is where we employ a lot of AI. It's working at the back. It's hidden. A second example. Forecasting the number of incidents that we should expect in a particular product category. Here is how you see the number of predicted incidents every month in the category of nuts and nut-related products and seeds. The historical data, the forecasting of the numbers of incidents. Should we expect something to increase, to decrease? These are the questions that such a forecast can answer. Third example, the likelihood of a particular risk. The likelihood that a specific risk like aflatoxin in nuts is going to increase. Or in another example that I could show, something new that did not happen yet, and we see this right now emerging. So these are the types of examples in which AI is being used for specific problems to support specific decisions. And this takes me to my final slide. What is coming next? It is all about the way that we choose the problems that we want to solve. Which are the particular decisions that we want to support? How can we formulate the problem that an intelligent algorithm should come and solve? That's a very important step in the process. And there are many different technologies, AI technologies and algorithms that can be employed, but you have to select the right one for the right problem. Second, manage the expectations. No, we are not going to be able to predict that this supplier in 1 week is going to have this kind of incident. So let's take action. What we can do is that we can support different specific decisions by providing estimated answers of different forms. A system can imitate a behavior by providing us some extra meaning that it would take us hours of looking at the data as humans to extract it. Or maybe it can generalize more quickly than we do and avoid the errors that we would do in generalizing from the observations. Or it can come and bring experience from the past in a way that fresh minds maybe can do, but old minds like mine cannot do so efficiently. So let's manage the expectations. And most important, what I find personally most important, is that this is not a solo operation that one company or one organization is going to excel at. Ensuring that we have safe food is the business of all of us and many of us. We cannot afford keeping our secrets hidden because they are a commercial secret. We have to share it, and we have to share the way that we do things. We have to share parts of our data, parts of our findings. We have to be very open about how we can make this technology work, because this is the only way in which we can make it get us to the desired result. Predict and prevent risks even better before they happen. That's my closing line, Amy.
Great, thank you so much, Nikos. I'm going to encourage everybody who hasn't sent their questions in to get those in ASAP. Just really quick, I wanted to bring your attention to our final webinar of the year, which is happening 1 week from today. That's with John Cuccoli of BRCGS. It's going to be a great session. We haven't gotten to speak to John in a minute here, so it'll be good to have him on again and look towards the future of brand protection and food safety in 2022. But now we're going to go on to the audience Q&A. As Nikos mentioned earlier, that That link there, I'll put up on your screen again here. Absolutely go and fill that out. I know we didn't have a chance to do it live on this broadcast, but let me go ahead and open the questions tab and see what we've got here. All right, we've got a question here from Francisco, and Francisco is asking, I see that you haven't listed CDC sources such as NORS and FoodNet. Is there a reason for this?
No, they are part of the sources that are covered. Everything that is announced, health related and associated with a food root cause is also covered.
All right, great. I think we have time for probably one more. I know we're right at our scheduled ending time. So this one is from Jackson. Jackson is wondering, for companies using AI in food industry and food manufacturing, could you speak on how you see it could help with supply chain optimization, such as reducing waste and increasing transparency?
Again, if we choose the problem that we want to solve, we will find the way to put some intelligent technology to help us. Reducing waste is very similar to the use case that I presented earlier that identifies safety issues or contamination issues. A technology that can monitor what is coming and can help us ensure that something that may not fit the quality standards that will make it appropriate for the retailer that we are usually supplying, but is good enough to channel it and use it to another buyer or even to another site like a food bank. This is a technology that can help us manage better issues, problems related to food waste, but it's not a generic solution. AI will solve food waste. An AI technology can assist us in this particular task and help us give a particular answer.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Nikos. If anyone else had questions that we didn't have time to get to, or maybe you're a little shy, maybe your question's a little too complicated to type out in the questions tab there, I would absolutely encourage you to reach out to PagerFSI, and we'd be more than happy to forward that question along to someone who can answer it for you. And we do hope to see you on our next webinar. But Nikos, right now I wanted to thank you so much for taking the time to join us all the way from Greece. I know it's probably getting a bit late for you over there, so thank you for putting in the extra hour to come and speak to us on this complex and very interesting topic. Any parting words of wisdom for the audience before we sign off for today?
It was a pleasure and an honor, and thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you,
All
Nico.
right. Yeah, and thank you, Paul. Thank you to all of our attendees today. As I mentioned at the beginning, the slides from today's presentation, including this link here on the screen, if you don't have a chance to type it out or write it down, take a picture, whatever, the slides will be available on pagerfsi.com as well as the recording on our YouTube channel. And I hope you all have a great rest of your week. I know we're coming right up on Friday, so have a good one and stay safe and stay healthy out there.